Welcome back to the iProgress podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined by Craig. This is episode 16, and today we're looking at this new phenomenon of AI writing, the GPT plugin, and we're going to be looking at how AI might be impacting our academic writing, our students, and also some of the content which we're going to be generating as academics ourselves. So, Craig, we've been playing around with this for the last couple of weeks. We've been trying to push it as far as possible. What are your first kind of overviews of it as an outsider to AI technology?
Yeah, I mean, as a total outsider, originally I was really skeptical, to be honest. I thought there was not going to be anything that will be able to develop a set of material, paragraphs, full sentences that will really convey a convincing message, that will convey something that, even if it's convincing, it's grammatically correct, that it will be worth using in anything. We've all seen these kind of Google Translate things where the words are there, but they don't make any sense whatsoever. I was expecting something like that. I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, but I've been very surprised by the quality of some of the stuff that's been coming out. Different topics, different requests that we've been able to give it, and it's just pumped something out that has made sense. It's been exactly what we're looking for, really. Almost every time. There's been a few exceptions, but yeah, most of the time things have been really good.
Yeah, no, I will completely agree. I kind of guess for our readers and viewers who perhaps haven't heard about this, although I think it's difficult not to have heard about it. I think within 5 days, the Chat AI website had over 1 million downloads or new users, because you don't have to download anything. It's just there. You just have to sign up to the program. At the minute, it's free, but obviously they're going to have to start charging for this. And essentially what you're presented with is a screen, and you just talk to a bot. You can ask them to summarize a book. You can ask them to give you 5 YouTube ideas that will impact students in 2023, and it will not only give you those ideas, but if you ask it to, it will bulk out paragraphs and paragraphs of potential content that you want to include. And one thing that we're particularly interested in terms of our YouTube videos, make sure to catch us on YouTube if you haven't already, is we can optimize the descriptions of our videos so that more people can find them. We can ask the chatbot to generate keywords which can make our videos stand out, and also some really impactful titles. But obviously the question comes back in that, if this is so good, might it not be scary for academics? Okay, obviously we know that our academic writing is sacred. It comes from us as individuals. We're building on the works of others. And it seems that this chatbot at the minute doesn't have access to behind paywall material. Okay, so we know that lots of academic papers are published behind the paywall, and as such, the general population and this chatbot doesn't have all of the access to all of the citations that we might need, although, it does know about certain psychometrics. It knows about certain scales and ideas and theories, things that might occur on kind of Wikipedia or be talked about on the internet more broadly. And so we feel almost safe on that side of things. But if we look to perhaps devious mechanisms in which it could be used by, it wouldn't take too long and too much skill or energy, time, resources, for a student to say, I've got no idea about this essay assignment that I've been set. I want to know a good structure for it, and I want to start generating some bulky bits of text, which then I can go and add to later. Is that a concern that you might have, Craig, or am I the only one worried about this?
Yeah, when you first mentioned this to me, I thought this has the potential to be massively misused. Obviously, there are really kind of quite interesting benefits as well. What I would go back to, actually, is something you were just saying there about citations and academic references. I actually had a bit of a play with it the other day, and I asked it to give me a summary of, I think it was something like the current knowledge on conspiracy belief or something like that. I was looking at something for some papers and some writing that I was doing. And I was like, I wonder if it could generate me a list of current papers, or a list of or a paragraph that just summarizes what we currently know.
Hmm.
So I'd kind of written my text, and this is what I wanted to say. And I said to the chatbot, write me a paragraph on what we currently know about conspiracy belief with citations. So I added the with citations. And what it came up with was almost the same argument that I'd written, which already annoyed me because I'd taken about an hour and a half to craft this kind of paragraph, and it gave me it in about 4 seconds. But it also put underneath a bullet pointed list of references.
Oh,
So
wow.
it had kind of Pew Research Center polls. They're kind of open access, I guess. But it also had stuff from journals like Frontiers in Psychology.
Sure.
So this is an open access journal. So that would suggest to me that this technology can scrape the internet for open access
Hmm.
materials. I'm not sure whether that means that it can't yet access things that are behind paywalls that are not open access, but it can generate stuff that is that has citations, and it will generate the citation list for you as well, which is even scarier.
So,
But yeah, going back to your original question, yeah, I'm quite worried at how this could be used. I think if students are struggling, we've already spoken a little bit about essay mills and things like that. If people aren't going to go to essay mills because hopefully they've seen our podcast and seen the kind of evils of essay mills, this could be an alternative for them, to be honest, in terms of typing in, write me an essay on, and then just putting in their title. They could quite easily do that. And that would be the same thing as
mhm.
using an essay mill, but arguably less easy for us as academics to detect, maybe.
Sure.
I don't know. Although what I have done is put the same request into Chat AI a couple of times in a couple of slightly different ways,
Hmm.
and it's basically just kicked out exactly the same response to me.
Sure.
So what you could potentially see is that if a lot of people are doing that, you could start to see much more plagiarism being picked up by things like Turnitin. So yeah, I think there's dangers that are inherent in this kind of technology. But like you say, if all you want is a summary of a particular area, if you're struggling with a particular topic, if a lecturer has covered something in a way that doesn't quite make sense to you,
Hmm.
then going into Chat AI, putting the topic into the chatbot, saying, give me a 200-word summary on conspiracy belief, and seeing what it kicks out for you, that could be a real good starting point for you in terms of planning your essay writing, your revision for exams. Could be a really nice resource for that kind of thing. So there are benefits as well as these potential drawbacks.
Yeah. So it sounds to me that the main benefit is essentially to almost scale up our efficiency, and taking these tasks which perhaps we do spend a lot of time doing in terms of trying to understand and digest this complex information and trying to represent it in a way which is actually more accessible. And one thing that I actually played around with is I took an essay that I'd written when I was at university. So it's a very old essay now. I had to scan it in; it was on paper. And essentially, what I did was I said, "Can you write me a page summary of this essay?" And then I just copy and pasted the essay in after my request, and it kicked me out 400, 500 words of what I'd already said. Now, this is really powerful because what this means is that it speeds up the way in which we will be accessing material. And also, you can add little caveats. So you can say, can you write this as if I am X demographic? Okay, so we was playing around with it, and we said we was asking it to generate, I think, just some ideas about a video that we had, and we said, "Can you present this as if I am a 20-year-old student?" And then we replicated it and says, "Can you present this as if I am a senior scholar in this field?" And tapping into what you were just saying, Craig, about how two pieces of work can come across very similar. When you add these further caveats to the chatbot, actually the way it's presented comes across very differently. And I think that's going to be these little niche elements is what's going to really amplify and add power to this tool, which could mean it goes undetected. But I think that element of efficiency, especially when it's about trying to develop your understanding and producing content which isn't for the purpose of being graded, but more for the purpose of just sharing information, I think that's where the real power comes from, and that for me is the key benefit. But of course, as with any benefit, there are drawbacks. And I think that the main one, as you was tapping into, is it kind of lacks that element of originality.
Yeah, 100%. So thinking through what we spoke about in multiple places in the past, thinking about what your argument is, finding your voice as a student, as a master's student, as a PhD candidate, thinking about what your argument is, where you stand on a particular topic. You can't do that if what you're doing is using this chatbot to generate your argument for you. So it's always best to use it as a kind of an initial launching off point. So if you're really struggling, you don't really understand the core definitions, use it for that. And then think about how you can then get into the literature, do your reading, start crafting your argument in your own voice. And it might be that you can kind of take inspiration from what the chatbot has given you, but you should never give the chatbot responsibility for writing your essay or your exam paper or your academic paper if you're a PhD candidate or an academic. I can't imagine academics would do that, to be honest. I'd hope not anyway. But yeah, it's a really interesting piece of kit, but it, like you say, comes with lots of ethical challenges as well in terms of kind of what does this mean for cheating, for detecting plagiarism, like the essay mills that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Like, what is the what's the implication of some of these things for academic standards, academic integrity?
And I can actually start to see that this might be something which could be implemented in policy. And we know in our work in terms of forensic psychology that policy on a governmental level is vastly behind the technological advances which are currently being used to commit crimes, perpetrate crimes, and impact victims of crimes. And so the same thing applies here. University policy just isn't keeping up with these technological developments. And I think that for lots of our listeners, this is going to be the first time that they've actually heard about this, and it might spur more people on to go and try it. But that those ethical considerations are really vast. We shouldn't be using it to deceive people. We shouldn't be using it to cheat, in terms of our exams, in terms of our essays, especially now that we're in a world where lots of our work is being generated remotely. So we don't have kind of eyes over our shoulders looking at what we do. So we do need to be taking responsibility for that as well. And it actually comes to the question of, I wonder if someone will actually go out on a limb and publish a paper, Fido and Harper 2023, featuring chatbot.ai, because you are giving that accreditation and that citation to this bot that's helped you. Obviously, though, this work is generated from multiple sources, and as such, those sources individually are lost, aren't they, when this information is being disseminated to you. In terms of our kind of final negative point almost that you came across when you was playing with stuff earlier, in terms of inbuilt biases.
Yeah, I was about to say that the AI itself has its own ethical code. So it's been kind of built into it, I guess. So people that are listening to the podcast, watching the video, will probably know that we do work in forensic psychology. We've mentioned that a few times. Part of that, particularly for my work, is around kind of sexuality, deviant sexuality, atypical sexuality. And I asked it to, again, just for a video idea for a different YouTube channel, actually, to try and develop me a description of a video that I'd already created. And it basically just said, no, I'm not doing that. So there might be issues around morality or ethics that are built into it, so it might not be willing to generate material that is potentially sensitive, potentially offensive. I think the word was used. So it might just be worth thinking that through in terms of whether it's going to be appropriate for you, whether it's going to give you what you want to get.
Of course, because I also believe, and people definitely correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, that these bots are trained on particular language, they're trained on particular literature, and if that literature is provided by somebody, even from somebody from a particular political orientation, that could have vast impacts on the type of material that it's being used to digest and kind of learn from. And as such, that's then going to implicate the answers that it gives us as users who want to make the use of it. We have, however, generated some kind of tips if you are going to be using this AI, which hopefully people will find useful. The first of all is to be really transparent if you are using this AI technology. You know, just as we would cite other academics and other authors when we are kind of generating material, be really clear in terms of what elements were generated or initially generated and then you adapted from this AI technology. But also, as part of best practices, if you are using this to design anything, even kind of going back to descriptions in YouTube videos like Craig was just talking about, then you do need to be making sure you check over this. It's not infallible. In fact, we were just looking at some things that we made this morning, and actually, you know, there might be a title which doesn't match fully to the content within that paragraph or that chapter. So that's important for you to really check through and be thorough. Make sure that you are citing broader sources. Don't just use the chat box to generate some text for you. Make sure that you are going back, finding the original authors of those ideas, and I guess reading those papers more thoroughly. You know, we've already noted that it can look at things which are perhaps open access, but going back to what we were talking about right at the start of this podcast, lots of this information is behind paywalls. As academics, most of us have the privilege of accessing the majority of this information, even though it does come at a cost. But it's really important to go back to the original sources of your data, just as we teach our undergraduates and our master's students, because even if an idea is discussed in a follow-up paper, that follow-up paper might have misinterpreted what the original idea was, and so we should always be going back to these original ideas. And then finally, just to keep this in perspective, it's an artificial intelligence tool that's being used to help people generate writing ideas and perhaps some content. It's definitely not infallible, and it will make mistakes. And also, I think that it originally was developed in a paper in 2018, and so retrospectively still in its infancy. And I think what could be quite scary for us is that there's lots more of this to come in various forms. I mean, we're already seeing that we can start to generate art which is AI driven, and again, that comes with its own kind of ethical boundaries. So for example, if I'm an artist, I should be paid for my work. This AI is taking my work and adapting it. It's using in its databases to generate new content. And as an artist, I'm not getting the recognition for my original work, just as academics perhaps aren't getting the acknowledgement for the work that is being used to generate this new AI-driven content. So Craig, what are your kind of final points and kind of take-home messages from using AI?
Exactly what you've just been saying, really. So thinking about what AI represents or what this technology represents is a really high level summary of the material that you're looking for. Don't rely on it for anything in depth, anything completely accurate. It should be used as like a skeleton for an argument that you're going to put forward. It will need fine tuning. It will need some academic oversight or some checks. You will need to add citations to it. You will still need to develop a reference list and things like that. But as a way of developing relatively brief overviews of concepts, of measures, of topic areas, it seems like a really efficient way of streamlining your revision, and maybe if you're an academic, developing some class notes for students as well, that puts forward material in a way that is much more accessible than a kind of standard lecture. So that's something that I might make use of in the next term or two.
Great stuff. Completely agree. So once again, thank you very much to all of our listeners. Let us know in the comments and also on Twitter, where we're most active, what you think of AI technology. Is it scary for you, or have you tried it yourself, and have you done some weird and wonderful things with it that you would like to share with us? We'll catch you in the next podcast. As always, we really hope that you found some value in today's content and have really enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to share it with peers. It really does go a long way. And whilst you're there, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and comment down below to let us know what you thought of today's video. Do you have any insights about the subject, or is there any future content that you would like to see? And finally, make sure to catch our podcast, which is released every Friday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.